Do you think, I mean, because here we are, we're talking about a GDP that is about the largest in Africa, and we're talking about this without constant power supply. How do you think that when this is finally got right, it will affect, you know, maybe we could be rebasing in the next 10 years. We understand we're supposed to be rebasing in the next 5 to 10 years, every 5 to 10 years. How do you think that this would affect us?
Okay, I'm still insisting that you shouldn't make this an issue, because even if it is tripled, and yet you still have this structure that encourages government, I don't know whether you understand precisely what I mean. Would you, for example, put your money in the bank one day and go borrow it back at 20% interest rate?
So you say
meanwhile, they're paying
that's what's happening?
Of course, that's what's happening. That's what mopping up of excess liquidity means. If you run a company or your family funds in that manner, the reality is that you're going to become poor in very short while. The fact that we're still existing with this kind of economic support is the reality of constant crude oil money coming in the system. In terms of the appropriate management of the economy, we have done very, very woefully. Don't mind what anybody tells you. The reality is that you can feel it yourself in terms of your income, in terms of the value of your life, in terms of the infrastructural deprivations that you know you have, in terms of the obvious level of degradation of our youths. You remember 2 weeks ago, the immigration service. I mean, these are, you don't have to be an expert or a PhD holder to know that the indices we are being thrown may be genuine, but are not the kind of indices that really induce growth.
So you do not believe that, you know, liquidity should be mopped up as often as it's been done?
Let me ask you the question in reverse. The process of, I don't know whether you heard the governor of Central Bank, when he said, for example, oh, what a foolish model we have been adopting. We have been consciously giving our own money at 0% interest rate.
I thought he stopped it. He said that will not happen anymore.
But it is still happening. It is still happening. And I'm surprised that nobody challenged and said, look, sir, for how long have you been giving away our money at 0%? And how much has it cost us as a country? What is the rationale for you giving your own money, government money, your family money, your corporate funds, to the banks for 0%, and you go and borrow it back? And interestingly, when you borrow that money back,
are the ones who are making this profit off Nigerians.
What you're doing is you are giving a subsidy to the banks for doing absolutely nothing. That's why the banks don't need the real sector. You can holler from here till tomorrow. It's of no consequence because they have this big brother who comes every month, deposits money in their hands, and then comes back the next day and say, look, I have unknowingly created the specter of surplus cash in the system. At the same time, I put all of us together, we don't ask, sir, how can you have surplus cash when you don't have money to repair your roads, you don't have money to repair your schools, and yet you're still going to borrow some more, and yet you have surplus cash? These are all contradictions which Nigerians should address, because you cannot run a company, a family, community fund, or whatever, so long as you accommodate a process that makes you poorer when you get richer. And when you look at it over the years, from 19 to now, you would find that we have become poorer. And one of the main drivers of poverty in this country has been the exchange rate. A lot of people will tell you and talk with you and say in nostalgia that, oh, it was nice in the 70s and 80s and things like that. And some critics would say, but we cannot do that now. That was fun and all that, but we don't have enough this. But we have much more, 10 times, 20 times more money than we had then. Yeah, but we are overspending it and misappropriating. Yes, but still we have an import cover that's 4 or 5 times what it was before. So it doesn't gel that your exchange rate should be higher than 80 naira to $1. You know, don't let people tell you, we have to, because we don't have a diversified economy and all that. You know, you cannot have a diversified economy because of the process whereby the government itself consciously creates excess liquidity. And excess liquidity is the driver of high interest rate. Because of excess liquidity, the government, the banks, the central bank says, I don't want people to access this huge amount of funds in the system. Okay, so we will take it out from the system, warehouse it very idly, and yet we're prepared to pay 10-12%. And we are paying 10-12% because we don't want other people to access the funds in the system.
I know we got
can you grow an economy?
Just a quick one here. If we were not mopping up excess liquidity, if the government was not giving this money to the banks and then at 0%, and then they giving it back to us at 11%, if we had rebased our GDP when this was not happening, would our GDP be different?
I believe quite sincerely that we would not be talking of comparison with South Africa. We'll be talking in comparison with the top 10 nations in the world if we were doing the right thing. So the fact that we are surviving in spite of consciously, deliberately, openly making sure that our people get poorer when we get richer. We get poorer when we earn more dollars, okay? We get poorer when we borrow money we don't need. We get poorer when we warehouse the money we borrow. We get poorer when we create a situation where we deliberately have a deficit in each annual year's budget, but we have a surplus that is idle, and we still go and borrow at 10, 12, 13, 14, 15% to cover a deficit. Meanwhile, we enjoy a surplus. These are all contradictions. The reality is, of course, is that you cannot say that these are not happening. These things are not happening. Yeah,
interesting. I think this is what we're looking at a future date, but we have to thank you for coming on this morning, Mr. Henry BOYO, an economist, looking at the economy, especially after we rebased GDP, looking at those three methods of computing them. All right, well, that's it today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain.
Well, thank you, Maokwe Ogun.
Many thanks, I'm Sulaiman Lede.